a lot of our wireless now is wideband because of our frequency is shrinking. The
Yes.
spectrum that we're allowed to
Okay.
use is
Right.
shrinking and shrinking.
Right.
And now we're seeing a lot more wireless gear on set. At first, it was just the occasional modulus video transmitter. Now there's multiple video transmitters, remote follow focus. There's and now there's dimmer boards and remote control lighting,
Right.
that are in the, I guess, in you know, we it's causing us to hear now new and weird sounds on our wireless mics because everything is wireless now. It's Bluetooth.
Right.
It's up in the
Yeah,
2.4 or 5.8
it's not just
gigahertz
mics. There's a
range.
lot of things out
A lot
going.
of stuff,
Yeah.
and you know, some of it causes, you know, sometimes we just hear things. That's
Yeah.
like, what was that? Where did it come from?
Yeah.
And it's funny, as a production sound person, we're highly encouraged to join the FCC and get a low auxiliary broadcast license.
Low auxiliary broadcast license.
Yeah, low power auxiliary broadcast
What
license.
does that allow you to do?
Well, it allows us to have standing with when it comes to deciding who gets to use what frequencies.
Oh.
People, you know, if you're an unlicensed user,
Yeah.
you can't. You
Yeah.
can be asked to get off frequency.
Okay.
But a licensed user takes precedence over an unlicensed user.
Oh.
And it's not just in the sound world. This started out with, you know, remote control airplanes. Anything that was
Okay.
remote controlled was covered
Gotcha.
by the government, by the FCC.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you turn something on that transmits something, you're using the airwaves, and that's where the feds step in.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing so much stuff on the market now. We're specifically told what blocks we can use, of frequencies that we can use. And if we step out of that block, it's a really heavy fine.
Okay.
But now we're having to bring this gear to set, and you know, we might have a dimmer board op that has a lot of wireless lights going,
Sure.
and we just ask them, what frequency range are you in? They don't know,
Yeah.
because they just plug it in and turn it on.
Right.
And so there it's like the Wild West.
Yeah.
And
That's interesting because we do the same thing now. We've got wireless for the sky panels,
yeah,
all of that. I personally, it's not my system, it's Brad's, but
Right.
I could not tell you that. If somebody asked me cold on that, what frequency we were in, no idea.
or at least what
range?
or at least what range are you in?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, I wouldn't even know that. Yeah.
So yeah, it helps to know that.
Sure.
Because then we have apps and computer programs that help us coordinate our wireless with each other. But if
Okay.
we at least know the range that you're in,
You
or,
have a
or even
parameter.
specific frequencies, we can
Right.
account for that in our software
Interesting.
and stay
Let's
clear.
cover this on the show too.
That's
Yeah,
a lot of
let's-
subjects.
Yeah, yeah. No kidding. No
So
kidding.
there's, you know, but a lot of times, you know, those problems don't manifest themselves easily at all. Right behind me.
Yeah, that might be a problem. We'll probably put it in the.
Put it up front somewhere.
Yeah, probably in the front pocket or something.
Okay,
Well, yeah, it'll get bumping anything or, you know.
better.
We spent a lot of money on these Rode mics.
You know it. Well, that's the thing. My Electros, you can turn the clip upside down,
Oh,
so that the
wow.
plugs come
So
out into the bottom,
That's nice.
and the antenna
That's
points
nice.
down.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, but when those problems rear their ugly head, it's never during rehearsal. It's always during the
Oh,
take.
of course.
And then you're, you know, as a sound person, we're hired with our gear. So
Right.
if the gear doesn't perform, that's our
you.
condition
That's
of employment.
on you.
Yeah. Nobody else on the set really has that arrangement.
Yeah.
Outside of maybe Steadicam or
Yeah,
something
or
like
maybe
that.
lighting.
Or
Maybe
lighting. But you know, but now we have to chase down this ghost. And chasing the ghost is no fun when you got that spotlight on you going.
Yeah. Yeah, why the whole set is waiting on you. Yeah.
You don't like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I never thought about those competing frequencies out there, but it's more and more. I mean, you got not only like a Teradek or wireless monitor that the director is walking around with.
I mean, we were 486 to around 800, 900 something. And then all of a sudden the government sold off a lot of the frequency spectrum, so now we're 470 up to 600.
Wow.
And even then, that's like, so we lost blocks 27 and 28.
Wow.
And so technologies had to find their way around it.
Yeah.
And solve that problem.
Hey everybody, Friday at 2 o'clock, got to be Burnie's Applebox. Here we are again, and we are here with the Mr. Sound himself, Chris Howland. How you doing, brother?
Good, how are you?
Great. Yeah, the second time on the show, right? Yeah. And you're a classic example of what I wished I could do with the show. I wished you were here once a month because, when you sit down here, we start talking, and I realize there's 6 shows here. You know what I mean?
A lot of interesting topics to cover.
There's a lot of stuff, and our crazy production life, you know what I mean, that we live, that on top of what you were just telling me about, which we're going to get into, which is radio frequency, which is something that I had never even imagined how affected you are by that, because I've just been saying, now great, we can take our wireless systems and dim lights and do that, never thinking what else it might affect.
Right.
So that's going to be, there's my guy, Brad. I'm so glad I didn't turn my phone off. Sorry, Brad, I'll call you later, buddy.
Tell him you're available.
I'm available. So you have had Tony. Let me introduce Tony. Tony, how you doing? I can't forget Tony. My gosh.
Always forgets me.
You know what? Tony is the guy, the reason that I know you.
Oh, yeah?
Tony hired us years back on one of his productions.
That's right.
And I was the gaffer, and you were doing sound on that. I think that was a 3-day shoot.
It was corporate, right? It was corporate job.
Yeah, corporate, yeah.
For sure.
Have you been paid on that?
Yeah.
We're going to have to talk to Tony after the show.
He was tough.
Oh, yeah, Tony was tough. Tony was tough.
Oh, yeah, you hated those 8-hour days, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Air
man.
conditioning.
I was ready to die. I had to sleep in the car. Yeah. But so you've had something very interesting lately. You were interviewed for American Cinematographer, I think, right?
Yeah. My buddy Jay Holben wrote the article. He's a DP that I'd worked with on a movie years ago.
Right.
What was it? It was called, funny title, 2 Million Stupid Women,
Okay.
which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But that's the title of the movie. It was actually written by a very smart woman.
Yeah.
I think her name was Amy. She's very sweet. But it was a really interesting story. Basically, a relationship story with 3 principal characters. And
Sure.
And Jay was the DP, and my other friend was also working on it, Jason Crothers.
Okay.
I always call him Brother Crothers because I think it sounds
that's
great.
nice.
But sweetheart of a DP. Anyway, Jay, I hadn't seen Jay in a couple of years, and I ran into him on the set of The Mandalorian. And it just out of the blue, we're all setting up, and he's like, "Hey, how are you?" And so we got a chance to catch up, and he's like, "Hey, I'm working on a piece. Do you mind if we sit down at lunch and I can ask you some questions?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely."
So you were just on set, and he says, "Hey, this is get some good info here for my article."
Well, yeah, when the little recorder comes out and he starts asking you questions, you're like, okay, it's
all right. All right, now I've got to really think about this.
Cut and chew my food and put a sentence together.
Yeah, you're right.
Which is great. But
all business is done at lunch on set, right?
And yeah, absolutely. But he told me the article was about how camera can better work with sound on set, and to me that was just such a large, open-ended topic of discussion.
Oh, very much so.
Because we all kind of do our work from our various worlds, and we have our view of the set. But that was always the information. That's always the really good conversations I have with Jay, is because he's very willing to share the view from his chair. I can share the view from mine, and he really cares enough to ask.
That's
which
nice.
is great. And so we covered a lot of topics. Not all of our conversations in the article, but there's also 2 other mixers that he interviewed for the article as well.
Okay.
Kevin Villante and Manuel Lopez.
Okay. And what area are they? I know you do narrative, right?
Yeah, I do narrative, and I believe Kevin was more the reality side of things, and Manuel was the more E&G, narrative E&G person.
Sure.
Which seemed to be kind of the differences.
Yeah.
So Jay did a good job of getting a cross section, knowing that not all sound people are the same.
You know what? And there again, that is something, because in all honesty, even after being in the business as long as I have, I sort of generalize sound. You know, I never think about, of course, when you get, and you know, it's probably more when you're in the woods of it, like you need a specific thing, hey, who does good reality sound, who does a good ENG player, who's a good narrative player.
Different workflows altogether.
Sure.
And but there's surprising similarities between them too.
Of course.
And but our conversation kind of went through in regards to how we work together on set. And you know, I kind of started out with the premise that one of the very first things that was taught to me during my internship by my mentor was the lifeblood of the set is information. It's the flow of information. Nobody makes a decision without it.
Right.
And our decisions change with new information.
Right.
So you have to constantly make sure that you're in touch with that. And I said, one of the things I offered up was camera department is definitely a hierarchy structure where information comes from the top down.
Right.
You know, in the perfect world, your director and DP do a private rehearsal with the actors, then they rehearse for the keys, and then the direction or all the decisions made on how that shot's going to be blocked and lit and everything comes from that. All that information comes from the DP,
right,
down to G&E, down to the camera crew.
Right.
So all of those people on that crew enjoy a nice steady stream of information that this is what they do, this is what they do. As a sound crew, what we have to do to set up is to work within very close proximity to that process.
Right.
So we're making a plan based on what we know, which is based on what camera G&E are doing.
Yes.
And what the space will allow us to do.
Right. So you feel like you don't have a really, in the context of what you just said, a real good flow of information to your department. You're more out like now you've got to hunt and gather information,
we do.
Right?
We have to monitor multiple streams of information, monitor the situation, find out where our lights are going to be, where camera's going to move, what type of build the camera's going to be. Is it going to be handheld on a dolly? Is it going to be Steadicam? Those all have different implications for us.
Right.
So,
as well as wardrobe, right?
Sure,
I mean, wardrobe's a player in there for you as well.
Every process. I mean, props. Art department.
Sure.
You know, hanging chandeliers that you're either going to see or not see, and how easy are they to move, and can we? Sometimes we're not allowed to touch them. So, but for us, working right next to camera G&E, that's getting their nice steady flow of information on how they're setting the pace.
Right.
We have to monitor and actively seek out new information if it happens.
Gotcha.
If we see something going up, we're like, now we have to ask questions, and that's where that you want that cooperation has to happen.
Right.
And you know, there's times when we have to decide, well, do we bother the DP about this, or can we talk to the key grip, or you know, or is this something that just one of the rank and file grips can handle for us?
Right.
And then and you don't want to ask a rank and file grip or an electrician to do something that's going to step them out of their comfort zone and say, you know what, I got to check with my boss. You know?
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Also, too, there's a responsibility there that I think, you know, if I've got just a G&E guy on set, I don't know that I want him, you know what I mean, have the responsibility of relaying that information. Not because, you know, they would not have the knowledge base, but if it's not his job, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Why put him in that position?
Yeah,
you know?
And especially if they're mid-task doing something else.
Yes.
That's where the personality things and the diplomacy thing comes into play, where we really have to wait for the right time. Because clearly, if you just have to be able, as a sound person, you just have to be able to read people.
Yes,
like if somebody's a couple things in their hand, they're on task, it's like, now's not the time.
Right. And sound are the best observers of the set. I know that. You know what I mean? Because you are doing, and you know what? I learned something new in just what you told me there about that flow of information, because there again, I'm in the G&E world. I never thought about that flow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, do you do ever anything? Do you go up and are proactive with the DP and say that? Or is it just because the sort of the context of his world is outside of sound that it just doesn't get translated?
You know, I like to try for each project. I like to start as early in the process as possible. One of the more frustrating things about being in the sound department is that sometimes we're not hired until a week or two out.
Right.
And by the time we get there, in most cases, there's already been a tech scout. There's already been a production meeting. There's already been, and for me, I love going on tech scouts and I love going to the production meetings. And for me, it's because if I can sit in a van with the DP, the key grip, the gaffer, the first AD, and the director, and just those 5 people, and just listen to them talk through the ideas, I don't have to say a word.
Yeah, you're mapping out what's going to happen.
But now I not only understand how they communicate, I understand their sense of humor, and I understand the dynamic and the history between them.
There you go.
And that, to me, is...
That's so important.
It's very important, because then that makes everything easier on the day. I'm not talking to a stranger. And then I could get to see on a tech scout, I'm there for much the same reason camera is.
Right.
Because we need to logistically size up the location. How am I going to get my gear in and out? How am I going to keep my people safe?
Absolutely.
Where are we going to be shooting? What, how does it play in the story? There's, for years it was assumed, well, if you take the sound mixer, they'll just say it's a bad location. It's like, it's not really the reason why I'm there. I'm embedded into the story, the telling of the story, and I want to know what is this, what do I have to prepare for with this location?
Right.
Some locations have a great natural sound to them that play right into what the story is.
Yeah. Others do not.
Others don't. So but I need to prepare for that stuff. And if nothing else, even if I can't do a single thing about it, I can at least send detailed notes to the post team saying, this is how it was. That way, when they have their information and they first get it, they know they have to allocate a little more time to that scene.
Yes.
And they don't get caught off guard.
That's a very good point.
And that's it. Even if I can't do a single thing, the least I can do is raise the red flag.
So now you're giving the red flag to post, saying, look out for this, because this is going to take some special handling.
Yeah, these scenes are easy. This one's more difficult.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And so everybody knows it's not a surprise. If I can save post from having a complete surprise that just throws them off.
Right. So quite often then you're not given a scout day, or when they're out, it's a rarity.
It is a rarity still for me. I do a lot of, honestly, the last couple of years have really just been day playing. Lots of B units, double up days, mostly on episodic TV and feature films. Which has been really cool because I can work on so many different types of sets. And it's still narrative, and it's really neat to see how they all work.
That's really great.
And also varying sizes and scopes. But on the longer running projects, I do have to ask for it. On the...
Yeah, and I think it's a mistake not to have you out there. I do. You know what? We're going to take a little break now, but we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Burnie. I own Burnie's Grip and Lighting, San Diego Grip and Lighting, and Los Angeles Grip and Lighting. We pride ourselves on not only renting you the best equipment, but also giving you the best crews. And one of our core values here at Burnie's Grip and Lighting is that we give you the highest production value in the world. And remember, people used to say national, local. No. We present world-class production value on every set. We also know budgets are very tight these days, and you've got 10 hours to get what you need in the can. We move ahead, we move fast, and we know what you need. When you rent from Burnie's Grip and Lighting, you have a partner on your production for that day that is making sure you are well taken care of. So anytime you're in Southern California, give us a call at 714-609-3545, and we'll take very good care of you. See you on set. And we are back. Hey. Chris, and you were just talking about not going on a scout, which I think is a big mistake. I'll tell you, and somebody who came into the business, as I've said many times a little later in my life, understanding what sound is, right? It's given short shift generally by the whole industry, I think, because I've always said this, people are really focused on the camera, maybe next they're focused on lighting, but that's maybe a couple notches down. They should be focused on audio right on the beginning of it, because if you don't have audio, you have nothing. I mean, maybe if it's a narrative, you can loop it in, but certainly in most of the work I do, which is corporate, industrial, stuff like that, if your audio's bad, that's a real downer. You know what I mean?
You know, and that's the thing too. It's you know, audio or sound on set. That's you have your visual, and that's telling you a lot of information about the story, about the condition the actor's in. But the sound, even if there's no dialogue, the sound is still your emotional connection to the character.
Absolutely.
And without that, it becomes an MOS shot. It just doesn't communicate the same thing. Even if it's somebody, like I had a shot last night, process trailer shot, non-dialogue, of an actor in the back seat of a car, and they were contemplating, and the script said not heavy breathing, but it was like, you know, elevated
Labored,
breaths, and so we're now process trailer shots on Hollywood Boulevard. You know,
not busy at all.
Not busy at all.
Yeah.
But that's what we're capturing, and it was non-dialogue scene.
Wow.
But it was really all about that
breathing.
Emotional moment, that emotional moment with that character. We're in their world, and that actor has a lot to think about, process, and the audience is right there, you know, with them.
Right.
And I'm listening, and what we were capturing was that connection, but it was also the sound of the car running, the air outside,
the creaks, the intermittent sounds.
Yeah, they did a really cool lighting rig. Even though we were on a process trailer driving down a street, they still had tubes up outside.
Oh, they did,
making the lights.
Stereo, so like it was oh, that is so awesome.
It was really, really neat.
That's great.
It was amazing. It was interesting though, because usually I sit in the front seat of the shot maker. In this particular case, I had to give up my seat to the dimmer board operator.
Oh my gosh!
First time, and
wow. So where were you? Where did they put you?
I did not ride along. I ended up just because this actor was easy to work with. I put a lav on them, and I also planted a very nice mic in the car.
Okay.
And I could get it fairly close to them.
Good.
So I was pretty. It wasn't it would have been harder if there was a really crazy dynamic range, like whispering to screams.
Right.
But this was just capturing the bed and trying to capture some detail.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, in those situations, we put our chess pieces in place.
Yeah.
I put the bag in the trunk, hit record,
and then hold your breath.
Wave goodbye. That's what the setup allowed me to do, and and like I said, we are working around the camera G&E setup, and we can only do what we're allowed to do, and not, you know, we don't want to distract from the actor's performance. We don't want to impede camera's ability to cover stuff or light things.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to that flow of information,
right,
you know, there's always these little curveballs that get thrown at you.
Right.
But for us, we have to constantly be in tune to it. We can't disengage ever.
Yes.
Because we have to actively seek out. That information just doesn't fly into our department and say,
you have to be an eavesdropper.
That's what we have to do. So more often than not, we're working within the good graces of camera G&E.
Yeah.
And
we
want,
inevitably, I mean, the joke with me, and this has happened for real so many times, is that wherever that microphone, where that boom is, where the key light's going, right? I mean, inevitably. And I think there is some sense to it. It's a prime spot, obviously, for both things.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But that is always something that cracks me up because it's so inevitable. And, you know, and actually, sound is the one department that I feel like is working with all other departments to make it right. You know what I mean?
True. I mean,
lighting guys will like come in there and sort of dominate some of the space sometimes because of what they need or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, sound is very delicate. Dialogue is one thing, but even the non-dialogue scenes can be the most delicate to cover. And so, in any department, any department can affect what the sound coverage sounds like.
Sure.
Either, most of the time, they don't know it, but that's why we have to just stay in the loop and watch the setups as they happen and try to head those problems off at the pass. And what was I going to say?
You know, I was going to ask you something. Give us a little breakdown, if you could, in the differences between narrative, reality, and ENG, and just real, very basic things like the priorities of each one and how they might be different from each other.
The workflows are generally different. I mean, even within the realm of reality, there's different genres, different subgenres of reality.
Sure.
And the one that I'm most familiar with is the competition elimination reality show.
Okay.
Where I really, and honestly, I've worked on a handful of shows, but there's only one show I did the full season of, and it was what was it? It was on Bravo. It was season 2 of a show called Sheer Genius.
Okay.
And it was a haircutting competition elimination reality show.
All right.
So they started out with 12 competitors, and every week we
somebody would go
one down.
by the wayside. Yeah.
Right. And so that show was largely centered around a stage where we had a control room type setup, and which often resembles broadcast.
Right.
Except we're recording everything to decks and they edit later.
Yeah.
So the way media was handled was more on the narrative side, where they were putting cards in cameras and data managing like they would on a narrative, as opposed to a broadcast show where you record to decks and that go. You just
Right.
Our build was multiple shark fins around the perimeter of the stage.
Okay.
We used a scissor lift to get everything up there. It took a full day.
Sure.
Run all these RF cables back to the control room where we had our main racks, and then we had 4 ENG bags for certain types of setups where they would want us plugged into a camera, covering what that camera is covering.
Gotcha.
At the same time, like we have our big global recording system that's recording everybody all the time.
Yeah. How many people did you need for a project that size?
Let's see. We had we had three board ops, and 2 of us were A2s. So 1, 2, 3, there was 5 of us there on any given day, and then I was the swing board op A2.
Okay.
So I would go back and forth.
Gotcha.
So some days I was mixing, some days I was just A2.
Okay. And the reality is very famous for the long shot, right? Where they take some other audio from a different place and lay it over.
Yes.
That, right, yeah.
Yes.
So audio really, in reality, plays maybe even a bigger role in that storytelling than even narrative does.
Well, it starts to resemble documentary coverage in a sense, where you have all these sit-down interviews. Every day ended with a stream of sit-down interviews.
Okay.
Kind of debriefing the entire cast, what happened, how did you deal with it.
Yeah.
They would ask them a set of questions that were leading up to, like, okay, now we're going to pretend the competition hasn't happened yet. So,
okay, gotcha.
how are you going to approach this, and what's your strategy?
Oh,
blah, blah, blah.
interesting.
And then the second.
So the competition had been done.
Yes.
And they do the wrap up, and then they do it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So they can keep the context and all
Right.
that. Gotcha.
And then now we're doing the interviews of what happened. Why did
Gotcha.
you make that decision? And they would all of that dialogue, like in a documentary, they would shoot the entire thing, but most of the time that dialogue of the interview played over B-roll footage, over what they did. So that's a secondary source of sound that's
Gotcha.
playing under that. But more often than not, like in documentary, that sit down interview dialogue is what's narrating everything that's going on.
Driving the story along.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
even though that's where the sit down interview dialogue is really important, because that's going to be the engine that drives your story.
Right. Right. Everything else is sort of you're grabbing it, but you're grabbing it for bites, pieces, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other that's the kind of the competition setup, and then there's house reality, which that's how I've heard it referred to. It's funny. I always think about what would Doc Justice do, because Doc was the reality sound guy that always comes to mind.
The king.
He's done so many shows. Him, Austin Storms, Chris Olsen. Those are the people who were.
They kind of defined the genre.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, yeah, and Austin was the one that brought me in on my first job.
Okay.
And,
Awesome.
and really, I learned by watching them, and they were really great.
Yeah.
But then there's the house reality show where they put all these people in an environment and then just then it becomes an anthropological study of
Yeah.
how humans deal with each other.
Yeah.
There's that kind of show, and then,
Yeah.
then you have your other shows that are like the dating shows.
Yeah, and then you've got Alaska: The Last Frontier, which you know what I mean, which my buddy Robert Jolly, who's been on here, he used that.
Robert.
You know Robert.
I know Robert.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I always wondered about that because that's, I mean, really situations that are very, I mean, you're in the middle. Of course, we don't see behind the camera. I got that.
Right.
I mean, they're not alone out there. Let's face it.
there's I mean, ice road truckers, Naked and Afraid. There's all these different reality shows.
Naked and Afraid. That's the one that blows my mind.
True.
You know?
I mean,
I can't watch that show anymore. Actually,
Right.
It was just like, that's a brutal show.
Yeah, all the way up to Deadliest Catch, which is it all
Deadliest
fits in the
Catch.
reality genre. It's huge genre.
Yeah. That's got to be that's got to be a tough way to make a living on that.
Yeah, I think the people who love to do it fit the mold of people who need an adventure.
Yeah.
They need that challenge. That's what they like.
Yeah.
And that's great.
That's great.
I've never felt the need to jump out of an airplane or bungee jump, but some of these characters love that.
Yeah, that is true. No, we're all, look. You know, I mean, our industry is an industry of personality types. It really is. You know what I mean? First, you have to have the basic personality to even be able to make sense of what our schedule is or how you earn money or you're working.
That's a constitution you have to have.
That you have to have that constitution to begin with.
Yep.
And then there's those sort of sub-interest things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that you have to be beyond.
Yeah, so that's kind of the reality segment. And Manuel Lopez Connell, which I know him through the boards. It's a nice guy. Was the E&G person, and that E&G is now such a huge subgenre for sound because it could be documentaries, it could be red carpets, it could be any manner of things that are shot in the E&G style. Even more narrative shows now are E&G style just because of the way they're moving. One of my good friends, Tom Stasinis, was working on a show called Entourage, and they did.
I loved Entourage.
It was fun. It was a fun show.
Yeah.
They had to shoot up quite a few. I mean, it was all location based.
Yes.
And a lot of actors.
All location. Yeah.
And I remember that this was years ago, but he had a bag with 8 411s, a 788T recorder. It was the biggest bag that I'd ever seen, but he had to adapt a narrative rig into an E&G bag to shoot on this golf course and to do all these crazy pickup locations.
Wow.
And so that's in the gear now, especially with some of the new stuff coming out, now our bags are getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
It's going down in size.
Thankfully. I think the latest thing to get to be introduced into the market was by a company called Zaxcom. It's called the Nova, and it's a little box that now lets you, just with that one box, you can have 8 lavs, and you can control the features on the lavs. The lavs themselves record, and you have this one box that just does everything. And 4 years ago, we would have had a recorder, we would have had a separate receiver for every single channel coming in.
Wow.
So you can imagine 8 of those.
Yeah.
And then you have to power distro all of that stuff.
Sure.
And then you have to RF distro all of that. So all the antenna info needs to make it to each unit. And that's my plug, Zaxcom. They simplified the game with their Nova, and then they just introduced it this year. It was pretty amazing.
Great. I wanted to ask you a question just came to mind. Is there any other industry that uses the equipment that you use for what we do sound-wise? Or is really what they're making just for media production?
Yeah, there's 2 different approaches to when it comes to gear for sound for us.
Right.
Some people really like to have gear that is purposefully made for film sound. Others tend to be more in the audio engineering sense, willing to use tools that are made for sound, and we adapt it to the filmmaking purpose.
Okay.
I see the value in both. There's a couple of companies that do, or there's a few companies that do film-specific dedicated products, But then those same companies will also make components that you can fit into a larger build. using more like, maybe like a Midas mixer that was, or a Yamaha mixer that was designed for music initially or other things.
Okay.
We can still use those products because
you can adapt those to the actual production.
They still take audio in and send it out, and
Yeah.
either by copper cables or by Dante or Matty, digital interfacing.
Okay.
And so there's a few different schools of thought there, and that's one of the cool. That's really one of the cool things about being a sound mixer. I always equate it to when you have your own gear and you can decide how you want everything set up. You're like a chef cooking in your own kitchen.
Sure. Okay.
You know how hot the stove gets. You know where the pans are. You know where the tools are. You know that you have enough sugar to make this cake. And,
right.
Everything
and then
is
you can
organized.
go over and get some items that usually aren't on the menu from over here for like music or even events, I suppose.
Yeah, because you set up your sound package in a way where if you need to augment it in fairly short notice, you can.
Yeah.
So that's always the fun part. But as sound mixers, we get to really dive into what we like, what gear is just we can.
But the majority is made specifically for recording.
Yes.
Narrative, ENG, or reality, if you will.
Yeah.
The documentary.
They're all adapted to us. I would say that in the reality side of things, especially house reality, when you have big builds, you'll have multiple deck recorders, things like that.
Yeah.
Software-based recorders. There's one called Boom Recorder, which is really great.
Gotcha.
But you'll have more of those elements in a bigger build.
Mm-hmm.
But in a smaller, narrative build, you might have, some mixers will just use a Kantar. It's made by a French company called Aton.
Okay.
And they just came out with a brand new version of that called the X3.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing machine.
Yeah.
And it's definitely there's a learning curve to it because it's kind of like I always equate it to being, since it's French, it's kind of like, if sound were translated into a romantic language, then that's the Kantar.
Oh, that's funny.
It's like any sentence in America you say "I love you," but in French you might say the literal translation would be "You are the one I love."
Yeah. Yes.
So
Gotcha.
same idea, but it's laid out in a different.
It's laid out like that. Very interesting.
And so that's the kind of the Kantar approach. You have to follow where they lead you.
Gotcha.
But once you get there, it's an incredible machine.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, you give me a good segue right here because I know you have done, and I'm going to let you explain it for me, but some stuff in Europe recently. In September, you were over there. Tell me about what that was all about.
That was a 10-day trip. It was sponsored by a company called K-Tech, which makes boom poles down in Carlsbad.
Okay.
Amazing company.
Carlsbad.
Yeah. Brenda Clemmy is the owner of the company. It was originally started by her father, Manfred. Okay. But Brenda runs the company, and she's been an incredible partner with us in LA Sound Mixers, which is a local Facebook group. That I started.
I know you have that, yes.
Yeah, I started that about 6-7 years ago now.
Okay.
And it just started out as a loose association of friends helping out each other.
Yeah.
But it's kind of grown to the point where it needed to have it's a purpose. So
a real thing,
yeah. So now it's dedicated to the mentorship and ongoing education of production sound professionals.
Okay. How many members do you have in that group?
About 1,200.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's not meant to be the biggest group in the world because we do want to keep it pretty LA-centric.
Yeah.
Because much of the conversation that we have are things that affect us here.
Yeah.
That wouldn't really pertain to other markets.
Right.
Either bigger or smaller markets. It's not the same conversation.
Right. I know. I was so envious when you put that together and you started having the groups. I thought, man, that is so it. I wished I would have done that.
Oh, we do. We have maybe half a dozen educational events through the year.
Yeah.
And we organize like a swap meet. For people to buy and sell their used
gear.
Great. Like we all back our cars up into a parking lot. It's like an old-fashioned, like a boot
actual
sale.
Physically right there.
Yeah. Well, we had our first one. I think it was at True Audio, and then we had another one at Audio Department, and then eventually we had a couple at True Audio. So the local vendors have been really awesome about supporting us and giving us a place to do this.
That's really nice.
And
that's really nice.
And that's one of the things Brenda did. I forgot what the first event they came and sponsored was, but we did a boom operators seminar. It was a master class for boom operators put on by a guy named Ken Strain, who is a 25-year veteran boom op, worked on a ton of shows. He's now residing in New York. I think he actually is in Chicago working with Aaron Sorkin. But he put together this class, and he and I hooked up, and I was like, well, I got a constituency that would love to come in. So we organized the event. K-Tech came in and said,
okay,
we'd love to sponsor. And Ken was great with it because that's the products he uses. So it worked out naturally. So we had a great first class. And then I think the next year, K-Tech did another version of that class with Ken in New York, which went really well. And then K-Tech really is just this is an investment for them. You know, they like contact with their end users, but they also want to further the education of the end user.
Sure.
And so what I loved about it was that they did not want to turn the event into a sales pitch. That's very tempting for a lot of companies to do that.
Of course.
If they're going to shell out, a couple of grand for this, they're
you
going
want to justify it in the sales
They're going to want to get on the
department,
stage and show their PowerPoint and tell you why their gear is the best.
Right.
K-Tech doesn't want that. They just want to be in the room. They want to help people learn. So they didn't actually affect any of the content. They let Ken do his thing, and all they wanted was a table in the corner to meet and greet their customers. And it's been a really great relationship. So the Europe trip was an extension of that.
Okay.
Ken has started a website now, and he's really wants to build the interest in his class. So he now calls it the Boom Right class. And K-Tech wanted to put one on in Munich and in London. So we flew into Munich, and then we rented a van, and we drove.
Wow.
We actually drove down to Paris, and then we did they did an informal product showing at a different event there.
Okay.
And then we did our second master class in London.
Wow.
And
so in Munich you did one, and then in London, in between time you drove to Paris.
Yeah.
And then did sort of an informal gathering.
Yes,
right?
that was just a social meet and greet.
Okay.
And there was a lot of some mixers showed up, but also the local vendors, people just trying to get the Paris community out to see everybody.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Right now we have another sound problem with the garbage truck coming through. I don't know how many picking that up. But there's your. I don't want to get off this subject, but there's your life right there, Chris.
That's it. Yeah. That's,
Hold for sound, right?
Beeps are easy to take out. Isotope is an amazing program. So
okay. So you can take that out.
Believe it or not, beeps are easier.
Beeps are easier. Okay.
Now they have a program where you can see on the screen low to high frequencies.
Yeah.
And that beep would actually show up as a line. It's a really skinny line across the top, and you can literally lasso that out. Gone.
Oh my
gone,
gosh.
gone.
Oh
so
my gosh.
yeah, it's pretty amazing.
We're not here on the Applebox. That's not in our sound budget, though. Yeah, we leave it in for ambience.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't want to get off of that subject. So this is very interesting. What did you find out? You told me some things when you were talking to the group. This is how big was the group that showed up in Munich?
In Munich, it was around 60. We had there, which was great, and that was the other thing. We went there to do the Boom Right master classes, but my specific job was to moderate a production sound panel discussion that happened directly after the class.
Okay.
So it was myself on the panel. In Munich, we had Mark Ulano with us, who was amazing. He's my mentor. He's the one that taught me, and then we also had Don Hale.
I know Don.
You know Don?
Sure.
We had Don on the panel, and then we had a boom operator, Kevin Cherokee, who's out of Atlanta.
Okay.
And it works on a lot of the big tentpole features.
Yeah.
And then Ken Strain was also a part of the panel as well.
Great.
And so that was really just kind of the open-ended discussion where we could learn from the audience could learn from us. We had we actually put out to everybody that RSVP, do you have specific questions for the panel? People gave us their questions. Yeah, and I had them, and as the conversation would go into certain areas, I'd be like, well, okay, we had a question for that.
Yeah.
And it was a really good way of navigating.
Do you recall
the
what
discussion.
some of the things that people were mostly interested in? What did it mirror what you hear here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing they were looking for was just clarity on, or a clarification on, it's always interesting because we all, as mixers and as sound crews, we're working on our own. We're on a show.
You're alone.
You're
not with a crew usually.
I don't have 5 other mixers. So it's not like you have 2 or 3 camera operators on a show that can all look at each other and go, let's compare. We don't have that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of. That's why we have so many social functions because.
Right.
There's every job has a lot of.
You need to make that happen. Yeah. You need to exchange that information.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest. one of the most transformative things that happened to me was I was on a job at shooting at Pinehurst, North Carolina. We were covering the U.S. Open Kids Golf Tournament.
Okay.
It was a documentary called Short Game.
Okay.
And it was 7 and 8-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
Playing Pinehurst, which is a major
course.
PGA course.
Yeah.
And there was 9 kids we were covering. So we had two cameras per kid and a sound person. So we had 18 camera operators, 9 production sound people. And
wow.
We had to cover them as they prepare. They play 4 rounds, one a day, I guess Thursday through Sunday, something like that. Maybe it's 3 rounds. I don't know. I'm not quite the golfer. But
yeah, right.
But we had to cover their warm-ups. We had to cover the dynamic with their family or with their caddy or who was there. We had kids from all over the world. I was paired with a kid from China and his mother and father. And there was, it was, what was the most interesting thing about it is that as far as production's concerned, it's 9 crews, 9 identical things. But every night we would get back to our hotel, all the sound mixers, and we'd have a Corona by the pool, and we talked about, well, what happened to you? Everybody had a story.
Yeah.
And none of our experiences were the same.
Wow.
It was 9 mixers and 9 unique experiences that day. Some of us were allowed to, some of us were not allowed to put lavs on any of the players. We just had, they just had to boom as best they can,
everything.
but stay out of sight.
Oh, man.
So and that's a lot of walking. They had to walk.
Oh, sure.
And there were other people that they could put a lav on the caddy, but not on the player. And
what was the issue there?
Personal comfort.
Oh.
They didn't want the player to be laved. I felt like I had the easiest job because the mother didn't want to be laved, but that's okay because she didn't really, she was there and she was very engaged, but the coaching came from the father.
Yeah.
But the father was no problem wearing a lav. Son, no problem wearing a lav. There was even a time when we got our wires crossed and they left with my gear on them. And they were like, we'll meet them before dinner.
Yeah.
And you can get the stuff back then. I was like, okay, great. So we pull into the parking lot to the restaurant for dinner, and we meet them in the parking lot. They've changed clothes. And I said, can I get those microphones back so I can put them on you? And he goes, oh, no, it's right here. Is that right?
Well, they put it on?
They laved themselves perfectly.
That's so awesome.
And it's just, so my experience was so easy that weekend.
Oh, my gosh.
But we kept rendezvousing. All 9 of us would rendezvous at different points during the shoot, and some of our guys would be just completely covered in sweat, walking the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
I was lucky. We had worked out a drill with our 2 camera operators where I was basically driving a golf cart with my bag next to me, and I had a shark fin mounted to the top of the so I could cover them from 200 yards away with line of sight.
That's
awesome. And I, one earpiece in my ear, and then I had a walkie in the other, and I'm just.
Other guys were just getting creamed.
Oh. But that's the thing. It's so for all of us, 9 distinctly different experiences.
Wow.
And different sets of things that they had to navigate in order to get their job done.
Right.
And of course, they all had, comparable gear, but different gear choices. So we talked about that.
Right.
And then the tricky part was having 9 different mixers that are usually separated, but eventually we're all going to converge in the same place and all have to work together.
Wow.
Or in the same place. So frequency coordination becomes a huge issue.
Major.
Because we had to then assign frequencies to people, knowing that this person is in this block, this person is in this block.
Yeah.
Not only for the talent labs, but for our IFB transmissions.
Right.
We didn't want one person's IFB transmitter stepping on somebody else's. So
Right.
all that had to be coordinated.
Right. Right.
So,
you know what? Was there anything in Europe that you went to Munich and then you went, Paris and then London?
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything unique that stood out to you as a problem, or maybe even a different way of doing things, a different approach? Anything at all?
Well, I did get to visit one friend on his set at Pinewood in West London, and it was good in a sense that they work a straight 10-hour day. They don't break for lunch.
Oh,
but at 10,
interesting.
At 10, they're done.
That's it.
That's it. And for a movie,
do they have like a walking lunch or anything? Or
yeah, they would have food being served, and that was the other thing too. Their regular sound crew is 4 people. whereas
my
ours is
gosh.
3. And actually, they almost always have a trainee, so they're 5.
Okay.
So yeah, they'll have two boom operators, mixer, 2 boom operators, a utility, which they now have over the last few years have changed their terminology. They don't call them boom operators anymore. They're first AS. First assistant sound.
Oh, interesting.
And then the utility is now called the second assistant sound to show parity with camera, just how the structure works.
Interesting.
So and it also illustrates the point that boom operators don't just boom. There's a whole level of responsibility of tasks and things you have to do to foster that flow of communication that has nothing to do with holding the stick. So, so even if you're doing a process trailer type setup and you don't have a boom op, you still need that second.
You still need
that guy. That still takes somebody setting up a mic, testing the mic with range of motion, blocking, and somebody on the other end listening to it and coordinating the frequencies and making sure that stuff stays where it needs to be.
Yeah, sure. So that is a little more hefty sound department in London. Was that the same in Munich, or was Munich more?
Munich was the set. We visited a set in Munich where there was only 2 people on the crew.
Yeah.
There was a mixer and a boom op, and it was kind of an ensemble comedy. It seemed like a police procedural, but it was a comedy.
Okay.
And it was shot it was at the Bavaria Film Studios, is where they shot it. And it was a nice stage where they were. But it was still a 2-person crew, and it was single camera, which was pretty interesting. I think it was a single Alexa.
Okay.
And
I'm sure it was an Alexa.
Yeah, single Alexa. And it was neat to watch them work. It definitely, they had a nice flow going. I thought it was interesting they didn't have a third, but that was just one of those things.
So now, and tell me, there's always that famous saying, waiting on sound. Yeah. I think everybody on set was looking for the opportunity to say it first. Right. You know what I mean? When there's a situation, I certainly understand it. Is it the same over there? Is there how is the sound? I feel like the sound department, and for a lot of the reasons that you just explained to us too, kind of gets the hit of where anybody's going to rib the sound guy, right? That just kind of comes in. Is it the same over there? Is there any?
It's, for me, just I would imagine a lot of it's the same.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody's on their best behavior when there's the delegation from LA there.
Yeah.
But,
no doubt.
But no, a lot of that's the same. And, and that's just human nature.
Yeah, you're right.
But every one of these sets, it's like they were so well dug in. They had obviously been there for a while. That. You can feel that as soon as you walk on.
Sure.
A crew that's well dug in.
Yeah.
And they know.
They've been doing it for years.
Yes.
They know all the players. They know what's happening next.
Even in a limited space, it's like these people are in, they come out, this person goes in, comes out.
It's very organized. Self-organized.
And that's part of the beauty of it for me. It's the dance. When it's as complicated as working on set is, and as much information is flowing around and all the different processes, when it comes together the right way, it's
beautiful,
satisfying.
Yeah,
very satisfying.
Satisfying, absolutely. That's a good word for it.
Yeah, because that's the big thing is that we all get there. We're all working together to get to the same point, so that when the slate claps.
Well, and there is nothing like those days when you're on a set for me. I'm on a set either one day or 2 or 3 days. Usually nothing longer than that.
Yeah.
There is such a great feeling when you've accomplished one of those things. It's such a collaborative effort when it really feels like you just came off and nailed it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That is personally very gratifying, and I think that everybody gets that experience.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's the. As tough as long as the hours are, and as tough as this job is, the most important thing to you it should be your inspiration.
Yes.
Don't lose your inspiration.
Oh, that's so true. You are the main. I always say this. Nobody's going to sit down and give you a performance review. You know what I mean? Right. You've got to be your own inspiration, and you've got to be your own judge too on how well you did. And I think people in our industry do that very well.
Yeah.
The ones who survive do it very well, I should say, because that's really all it's about. And it's not that you've just done 1 or 2 or 5 sound jobs. It's that you've done sound for 20 years.
Right.
That is really the payoff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For
That,
you personally.
all those experiences to draw on, take you to where you are now.
Yes, yes. And bring that to the table for somebody. You know what I mean? Do it. Yeah. You know, we were talking about a subject too that I should have known, should have thought about it, but did not. And we were talking about it in the little prelim while we were warming up. We had our 5-minute thing. Yeah. And that was competition for frequency.
Yes.
And you brought that up, the frequency issue again. And I just thought we'd go back into that and cover that a little bit because I found it very fascinating. Just go ahead and tell me now, your bandwidth has been narrowed.
Yeah, for production sound, for the longest time, we were able to use a nice, big, healthy section of frequency spectrum in the megahertz from around 486 up to, I want to say 800. We always think of them in blocks, and they always went up to block, 27, 28, and higher. The U.S. government, the FCC, has sold off a huge block of that spectrum to T-Mobile and to other mobile carriers to use cell phones. So now we've been chopped down to 600. We can't. Eventually, we will not be able to use anything above 600.
Okay.
So and there's plans to even that it could shrink further.
Yeah.
So we're now
because there's very little, I think, protection for you, right? I mean, you don't have a big lobbying group.
That's the thing.
There.
We don't have a big lobbying group. Most production sound people who are professionals, we were advised a few years ago to get our FCC license, what they call it, the Low Power Auxiliary Broadcast License.
Okay.
And so we actually have to register with the government and
actually
pay for our license
and get issued a license.
Yes, just so we can at least make known our end user group and get, hopefully
have some input in that, right?
Hopefully, and it's been very minor up to this point. I mean, what the government's going to do, they're going to do, but they have to know that
there's someone out there who's established a beachhead of frequency. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and as that's shrunk, at the same time, we have more wireless things on set than ever. We have, we've always had the modulus and things like that, and now we have wireless follow focus, where we have focus pullers at focus pulling stations.
Right.
And
every lighting guy now has his LED iPad, and he's dimming, he's changing color, he's doing everything with the lights.
Yeah, and
you've got your camera, you've got your wireless monitors now as well as that follow focus.
Yeah, wireless irises for the DP.
Yeah.
So those are all frequencies jumping around, and for us now we're starting to hear new and unique noises that we've never heard before on our mics, and so having to chase some of that down has been a real issue for the sound community. There's been a lot of chatter on the message groups about describing sounds, recordings of sounds that you've heard, and we can usually get an idea of how high pitched the frequency is that's stepping on us just by the pitch of it, how it sounds.
So by the higher pitch, you can tell this frequency is most likely coming from this range.
In the gigahertz range, 2.4, 5.8.
And then tell me this, after you do have that information and you're on set and people are waiting.
Yeah.
What's the process you use to run that down?
Well, the best thing is for us is to find out what frequency range or even what frequencies are being used by the devices on the set with us.
Okay.
Because we already have software in place that helps us keep our wireless signals from stepping on each other.
Okay.
And also helps coordinate us with TV transmissions in the area.
Yeah.
So we have software in place that helps us do that. There's apps on the iPhone, and there's also a wireless designer, a few different things on the computer that we have. So it would be great if, like follow focus users, it would be great if they just had an idea of
what their frequency
is or what range it's in.
Yeah.
That would help us coordinate it somewhat. But more often than not, most people don't know. It's not on.
They bought the wireless thing, and that's about as far as it's gone.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's there's
Does
just
it say it on the unit itself?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And it might just say the range that it operates in. And there's certain things that are even Bluetooth that are frequency skipping.
Okay.
Things so it might be just a range. that it's going to be in.
Right.
But that's the information we need to know in order to chase that stuff down.
Yeah,
and,
interesting.
And there's been a learning curve for everybody.
Yeah.
But the worst part is for us is that problem doesn't rear its ugly head until a take.
Until you roll.
Until
Boy.
we really get into it.
And that is the most costliest time on the set.
Yeah.
When your actors are out there, you're lit, you're
Yeah.
ready to go. Those minutes cost big money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you've allocated that time to do it. You know, it's funny because there never is any test. I mean, as long as I've been in this business, the sound guy had to find out the first time the actor came out, took their place, and then go, oh, hold on, I'm getting a scratch, or I'm getting a click, or,
Right.
you know what I mean? It happens to us here. I think it happened today. So, I mean, if something happens, you're rolling, you're going, that is the most expensive time.
Yeah.
What are the solutions to this? So, in other words, what do you see as a work? Because this is just in the last couple of years. Am I right?
Yeah. It would take the manufacturers publishing, or at least making known how the RF is distributed and used with the product, and what frequencies they're using to transmit that on. And every product being released in the States has to get an FCC approval for that reason.
Right.
But that's the thing, is we need manufacturers to make that information available.
Yeah.
If it's not already on
The
the gear.
pushback has to come back on the manufacturers, so
Right.
you know going in
Right.
where you're at and where these things are at.
Yeah.
Tell me this. We just got a few minutes left. What's new? What's on the outlook for the sound market? What do you see any new technology coming down the pike?
There's quite a bit of advancement when it comes to ENG style recorders,
Yeah.
and just our track count is always going up, feels like, which is good. I mean, in narrative, now more than ever, we can do, like, for the longest time, our carts were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we're in a stage where our sound carts are getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
That's good.
Which I like. I like a lot. I mean, I have three main rigs. I have the large, the large rig with the Midas console and the separate recorders, and then I have the bag rig, which is the smallest. That's my ENG rig that I use for any number of things. But then I have this medium-sized rig that I call the tabletop rig, and it was basically what used to be my big bag. It was too heavy to ever carry.
Yeah.
I eventually put all that stuff on this custom-built tabletop rig with a dedicated controller fader panel, and so I could take this whole thing, I could put it on this table, and it's like a little mini sound cart that fits on a tabletop. And I can have my antennas mounted on it from it. I can, my same Comtech transmitters for my public and private sends. And it's all there. And it can be powered off a battery indefinitely.
Nice.
And then it was designed by my friend Gene Martin over at Audio Department, who's an incredible fabricator. And then Gene designed this pedestal that it fits on. So I can take that whole thing, put it on this little pedestal. The whole thing is 19.5 inches wide at its widest point, and it allows me two monitors to see A and B camera, or I can use a single monitor with a quad split. 12 channels of wireless on it, 2 IFB sends.
Nice.
And that as in all of my B unit and day playing work, that's seen the most work.
That's the one that gets,
because I can move it in my Honda Element,
and
it works beautifully.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Tell us, how do we get a hold of Chris Howland?
Oh gosh, I leave a trail like a caterpillar on Facebook.
I know. That's good. Well, give us some of your stuff on Facebook, because that's going to be the easiest way for people to actually intersect you.
I think it's facebook.com/LA Sound Mixer. And you can look up my name, Chris Howland, as well. HOWLAND. And it's that's the best way to reach me through social media.
You can find Chris if you're looking for him, I assure you.
I also have a Twitter at LA Sound Mixer, and Instagram is the same.
Okay, good.
But yeah, they can reach out to me any of those ways.
Yeah, awesome, very good. Thank you so much, brother, and thanks for coming down. I really appreciate it. I know the distance between LA and Orange County is a lot longer than from Orange County to LA. I know that because we always go up there all the time. You guys never come down here.
Well, this is my second time here, and I got to tell you, the last time I drove back, is extremely happy. So
great.
This today will be the same. So.
Okay, well, we'll have you on again, buddy. Thanks a lot, and that's Burnie's Applebox. We'll see you next week.
Cut. That's a wrap.